All right, Trey Lance to the Cowboys for a fourth-round pick. It happened Friday night. We were all anticipating that something was probably going to happen because of the way the 49ers have been discussing this whole thing. But what's interesting to me, Grant, and tell me what you think on this one, I just think something changed for the 49ers because Trey Lance was a raw quarterback the day that they first watched film of him. He was a raw quarterback on draft day. He was a raw quarterback when they first saw him in their first mini camp, the first training camp. So they knew what they had. They knew he was a raw quarterback, but something happened to their timeline along the way that made them really impatient to the point where it's got to be now or never kind of a thing. And I'm just kind of wondering what you think the dynamic is. There's an unspoken part of this Trey Lance Niners dynamic, and I think it's the Niners timeline switched after they already had drafted this quarterback.
Well, I don't really look at it that way. I look at it as the Niners didn't get results with Trey. They tried to develop him on the bench. They tried to develop him on the field. They didn't get results. And going into year 3, he was overhauling his mechanics with a coach that they didn't recommend. So by that time, they had already hitched their wagon to Brock Purdy. There was no reason to really keep trying with Trey Lance anymore because Brock Purdy is what they want. So they gave up. But I think it's not that the timeline changed. Like you said, they knew he was raw. They knew he was a project. I just felt like they felt that they couldn't get any results with him. Maybe they blamed him. Maybe they felt it was his fault. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, now he's with another coach and he's down in Dallas with Jeff Christensen. Like, we're going to see where he goes from here. I just feel like they threw their hands up and they said, why should we keep trying when we have Brock? Okay. I think they just wanted to have an experienced, competent backup, not two young quarterbacks. And I think that's a mistake. You had a good problem on your hands. You had two good, young, promising quarterbacks. Now you have one good, young, promising quarterback, but we'll see what happens with Trey in Dallas.
Okay, tell me what you think of this theory. I think that after they lost last year in the NFC Championship game to Philly, that they probably had some meeting with Jed, who basically said, hey, you know what? Quarterback anything is no longer an acceptable excuse. And you have to. It can no longer be an acceptable excuse, whether it be injuries to quarterbacks or quarterbacks that didn't develop at the speed that we wanted to see. I just feel like maybe Jed injected himself into this equation and said, guys, because from afar, I think most people would say Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have a lot of job security, but they didn't run this off season like guys who have a lot of job security. They ran this off season like guys who need this season to happen for them or else. Am I reading that wrong? It just seemed like going into they seemed like they were playing with the house's money going into the playoffs. Coming out of the playoffs, it was almost like Jed sat down with them and said, hey guys, we want Lombardi trophies and we want them now. And if you can't, whatever's going to deliver it the soonest, do it because your time's running out. You don't think so?
I mean, I do think the Yorks are upset, but I don't think that the Yorks said, we need a Lombardi trophy now, get rid of Trey Lance. I think the fact that the Niners, that Kyle and John got rid of Trey Lance, I think that might have added to the Yorks' anger. Like, look, you were the ones that told us Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't good enough. You were the ones that told us to spend these picks, our picks, not your picks. We spent $30 million of our money on this kid for nothing. So fine, we've backed you. We've been patient with you, but you better be right about Brock. You better win the Super Bowl. We're freaking pissed. You're on notice. That's the way I see it. Like, they didn't come down hard on Kyle and John until the book was closed on Trey Lance. But now that it's closed, man, you wasted $30 million. You wasted premium draft capital. You've been to the 3 of the last 4 NFC Championship games. Great. But if you slip up, if you fall back, we're always going to point back to this trade. It doesn't matter what Trey Lance does in Dallas. If the Niners go 9-8 this year and have injuries, well, they could have had more depth if they had 3 first-round picks. It's always going to come back to this, and I think the Yorks are upset, and I think that's why you saw such a sort of Kyle with his tail between his legs after that game on Friday night. That's what I thought.
He did sound Okay, if you're one of these people that wanted to hear Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch fall on the sword for the Trey Lance trade, I thought you heard that Friday night. Did you hear?
Definitely
And that's
from
what I
Kyle.
got out of it.
Definitely from Kyle. John was like, "Hey man, we own it. We own it, man." Like, you kind of saying like, "Hey, Kyle owns it," and Kyle was like, "Man, I feel like I let Trey down. I was the one that wanted him here." Like, yeah, man, you did let him down, and you were the one that wanted him here. And I get the feeling that John was like, "Hey, I think Jimmy's good enough."
Okay, if John and Kyle both stated that, hey, Trey's story's not written, and I'm of the belief that that isn't also the case, that his story is not written, and we don't know if he's going to be good. Why the impetus to move him then?
Why the
cap
impetus
related?
to move him?
Yeah, I mean, if Kyle still thinks that he's going to be a good quarterback and isn't willing to say he's a bust, is that just to protect Trey's feelings, or do you think he actually believes he's going to be good? And then Lynch also said, "Hey, you know what? We think there's more coming for Trey. His time ran out here." Do you believe that, or is that what they're
Here's
just
my
saying?
interpretation. I think Kyle misread the situation. I always feel like everyone's like, "What's Kyle's plan here?" Like, man, he messed up. I think what he wanted, I think he feels Sam Darnold is better than Trey, but I think he felt he could keep all three. And I think if he felt if he would string Trey along and make this decision real late, that he would have a decision of be a third string quarterback on my team or be a third string quarterback on another team. And to Kyle's surprise and chagrin, Trey chose to be a third string quarterback on another team. I don't think Kyle saw it coming. I think it really shocked him. And I think he wishes he still had Trey as his third string quarterback, but Trey's a third string quarterback for Dallas now because I think Trey feels lied to and betrayed. And I understand if he feels that way. And I think it's good for him to go to a organization that is 100% behind him, unlike the Niners. So I think that's what happened. I don't think Kyle wanted to get. He said it in an interview on KMBR the day before they traded him. Like, I don't want him to leave. I want him to be the third string quarterback. I think Kyle really didn't realize that Trey would rather go anywhere else than be here. It was a real slap in Kyle's face. And I think sometimes Kyle's like, "What? I'm a nice guy." Like, no, man, like you really grate on some players. You can be extremely negative, and I think some players don't like you think they do. He seemed genuinely surprised that Trey Lance was like, "I'm done with you, Kyle." Yeah, I would have been done with you too in his position, man. You're not in his side. Sorry.
I mean, do you believe that Kyle thinks he's going to be good? Because if he does, why is he trading him to the third best team in the conference? I mean, you could have traded him to any other number of teams. It seemed like they wanted to get the best return, and they can say that, hey, because remember when they said they were going to trade him, it was like, or at least discuss trading him. It was like, well, if he can find a place where he can thrive. But he's not number 2 in Dallas. He's number 3 in Dallas. And the fact that you sent him to Dallas over anywhere else kind of says to me that they prioritized the return more than where he went.
Yeah,
I believe Dallas offered them the most.
It's the most they could have gotten for him, so that's great. But I think when Kyle says, I think he understands. Like, look, I never gave him a chance. I have my reasons for not giving him a chance, and I also didn't coach him very well. Like, I can't coach mechanics. Greasy can't coach mechanics. John Beck didn't get any results, but Jeff Christensen did. And Mike McCarthy has developed a Hall of Fame quarterback. He developed Aaron Rodgers. Like, there is a chance that Trey Lance does have success. And I think that's what everyone in the Niners is trying to say. Like, look, we didn't have the opportunity for him. It didn't work out. We'll own it and we'll eat, the money and the picks. But that doesn't mean he's going to be bad somewhere else. You don't think he's going to be bad somewhere else. Jimmy Garoppolo was asked about him today, and he said, "Oh, I think he's going to have success in this league." So I think a lot of people are looking at Trey as like, look, it didn't work out with the Niners. They didn't give you an opportunity. You had a couple opportunities, but essentially you didn't get one. He's still 23. Let's see what happens. That's the way I look at it, and I think Kyle might be a little nervous. But I think sending him to Dallas was a good thing, man. Like, you send him to Tampa, you might have to play right away. Like, you might stink. You go to Dallas, you get to learn on the bench from someone else, from a coach who's developed a quarterback on the bench. It might work out.
It's funny. That's what I was saying. I was saying that I think I know everybody says he needs to play. He needs to play when he's ready to play. And I think Dallas gives him an opportunity for a fresh start and more tutelage and that kind of thing, and it will delay him playing.